All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep on a topic that has caused a lot of debate online.
Oh, yeah.
Circumcision.
Definitely lots of opinions on that one.
We're going to be looking at a Reddit thread today where a mom-to-be asked for advice on whether or not she should circumcise her baby boy.
All right.
So, what's so fascinating about this particular Reddit thread is how quickly it turned into a space for men to share their experiences and feelings about circumcision.
Yeah.
Which, honestly,
Yeah.
isn't a topic you hear men talking about every day.
You know, it's really not a topic that comes up in casual conversation very often.
It's like she unintentionally opened up this floodgate of conversation that so many people just don't get to have.
Especially men.
Especially men, right?
Right.
And to make it even more interesting, her husband, who is uncircumcised, actually encouraged her to go ahead with the procedure.
Interesting.
And that just like set off all of these responses from other men who were so against it. Yeah, I bet.
So let's kind of break down some of the key arguments that came from this thread.
Right.
One of the most powerful points that was brought up was this whole idea of circumcision as a form of genital mutilation.
Yeah, and
a lot of the commenters
I can see why they would say that.
Really felt strongly that it was ethically wrong to perform a non-consensual and irreversible procedure on an infant who can't give consent.
Obviously. And
they were saying that this violates the child's bodily autonomy, which is, right, to make decisions about your own body.
It's a powerful argument for sure.
It's a really thought-provoking argument. And a lot of commenters even compared it to FGM.
Female genital mutilation.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're kind of pointing out the double standard that exists when it comes to these types of procedures.
For sure. And I think this is where the historical and cultural context really becomes crucial, you know.
Circumcision has been practiced for centuries in different cultures and religions.
And for different reasons.
Yeah, with different, you know, motivations and prevalence and all of that.
Right. And so, you know, like what might be considered completely normal in one culture might be seen as totally unnecessary or even harmful in another.
Absolutely. And that cultural relativity adds a whole other layer of complexity to this ethical debate.
Totally. So it's not just a simple like black and white issue. Now, aside from, you know, the ethical concerns, a lot of the commenters also expressed concern about the potential impact of circumcision on sexual pleasure.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And so
makes sense.
The foreskin, which is removed during circumcision, has a lot of nerve endings.
Yes, very sensitive area.
That contribute to sensitivity. And some men actually shared stories about experiencing like reduced pleasure or even difficulty reaching orgasm.
Yeah.
Because they were circumcised.
I can imagine that would be.
That's got to be
really difficult.
Really tough to deal with.
Yeah.
And it just really shows how this decision can have long-term consequences.
Yes, definitely.
They're way beyond.
And not just physical, right?
Yeah, not just physical, right?
Psychological and emotional, too.
Exactly. And it kind of leads into another point that was brought up in the thread, which is this whole question of medical necessity versus routine practice.
Oh, like, is it actually medically necessary?
Right.
Or is this just something that we do just because...
And a lot of people were saying that it should only be performed if there's like
a real medical reason?
A clear medical reason.
Right, like a medical necessity.
Right, not just because it's a routine thing. And they were pointing out that the rates of circumcision vary so much.
In different countries.
In different countries.
Yeah.
Which suggests that maybe it's not this like...
universal thing.
Universal procedure that's necessary for health.
Right.
And well-being.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder why it's so common in some places.
Like the U.S.
Yeah, like here in the United States.
Versus other places where it's not.
Less common.
Less common, yeah.
Like it really highlights the influence of like cultural norms and medical practices on how we view circumcision.
It's a good reminder to not just blindly accept things, but to actually question
it. Yeah. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this right?
Yeah.
Especially when it's something that can't be reversed.
Especially with medical procedures.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And speaking of procedures,
we
can't forget that.
Yeah.
Even though circumcision is generally considered safe,
right,
there are still risks.
There are always risks.
And potential complications.
With any procedure.
And some commenters shared personal stories.
About experiencing bleeding or infections or even botched procedures.
Wow.
Which really highlighted that.
It can happen.
No medical intervention is 100% risk-free.
Right. And that's important for parents to know, to be informed.
Yeah.
So parents really need to be fully informed about both the potential benefits and the risks.
Absolutely.
Before making this decision for their child.
For sure.
Now, while the majority of the thread was like overwhelmingly against circumcision, there were a few arguments presented in favor of it.
Okay, let's hear those.
So let's explore those perspectives for a minute.
All right.
One of the most common arguments that came up, especially from older generations, was that circumcision makes it easier to maintain hygiene.
Interesting.
But then you had other commenters,
Yeah.
including some medical professionals, who disputed that claim.
Interesting.
And said that you can maintain
good hygiene,
proper hygiene,
regardless
of whether or not
we're circumcised.
Interesting.
So it almost seemed like that argument might be based more on like tradition and cultural beliefs.
Or like what we're used to.
Yeah, rather than actual scientific evidence.
Right.
So
it's kind of like what we were talking about before.
Totally.
How cultural norms shape what we think is clean or acceptable.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily based on fact,
yeah,
but more on what we're used to.
And then another argument that came up again and again was this idea of social conformity.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And some fathers expressed that they wanted their sons to look like dad.
Oh, so like just kind of fit in
with their peers.
Yeah, like that's what I look like, so you should look like that too.
Right.
Interesting.
And, you know, this really kind of speaks to the societal pressures and anxieties surrounding male genitalia and how that can actually influence parents' decisions.
Yeah, like what's normal, what's supposed to look like, how do I make sure my kid fits in?
Exactly. And it just shows how deeply ingrained these norms can be, even when they might not be, based on logic or medical reasoning.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's so fascinating to see how personal experiences and cultural norms and societal expectations all come together in this conversation.
They all intersect in this one little question.
Right.
It really shows you how much this decision weighs on people.
Yeah.
How personal it is.
I think what really stood out to me in this whole Reddit thread was how many men were willing to open up and share their stories about it.
Totally.
It was so personal.
It's low, raw, and vulnerable.
Yeah, and these stories are so valuable because they really show us the range of emotions and experiences that people have with circumcision. Like, we hear from men who are so glad they weren't circumcised.
And talk about how much sensitivity and pleasure they experience. And that's interesting, you know? Because it really challenges how we think about it.
Totally.
Especially in places where it's so common.
Yeah, like it's not the narrative you typically hear.
Exactly. And then on the other side, we hear from men who feel this sense of loss or regret.
After being circumcised.
Yeah, they talk about reduced sensitivity or feeling violated or even anger at their parents for making that decision for them.
And reading those accounts is just like
heartbreaking.
Really makes you think about the long-term impact it can have psychologically.
Because it's not just the physical changes.
Yeah, it's not just about the physical. It's it's emotional and psychological too.
Absolutely. And here's a comment from one guy that really stood out to me. He said, "I am not cut. My Jewish fiance has told me that the Jewish boys she had fun with who are cut generally were less fun to play with as everything is drier and less sensitive down there."
Wow.
Like that's a very personal statement, and it shows how this can even affect relationships, you know.
Intimate relationships.
Exactly. And he goes on to say, she has said that when we have a kid, she wouldn't get it cut because she thinks it's cruel to do with no choice.
So even within a community where it has cultural or religious roots, you still see these
shifting attitudes. More and more people questioning it.
Right.
You know?
And prioritizing that choice for the child.
And then another guy shared his experience, and he said, uncircumcised at birth, later had the procedure done as an adult for medical reasons. Unequivocally, I say, don't do it. IMHO.
So he's experienced both sides of it.
Yeah, he's seen both sides.
That's a powerful perspective.
Yeah, it is. And he adds, If they want to, they can choose to remove it on their own. This isn't something the parent should choose for their child. If you still have trouble with this choice, look at the portrait table they strap the child to while they get mutilated.
Okay, so he's definitely not
No, holding back.
Not sugarcoating it.
Wow. That image is intense.
It is.
But it really just shows how much trauma some men associate with this.
And it's a good reminder that even though circumcision is a routine procedure, it is still surgery.
Right.
And it's still painful and can have complications.
Yeah, it seemed like the consensus on this thread was to basically delay the decision.
Delay it. Okay.
And let the son choose for himself.
When he's old enough.
When he's older. Yeah, like informed consent, bodily autonomy.
And one commenter said it perfectly.
How'd they say it?
He said, as an adult, he can always choose to get circumcised himself. If you choose for him, then he will never be able to uncircumcise himself.
That's such a good point.
So simple.
Yeah.
But it's so true.
That's so true.
And I think it's important to remember that, this whole conversation is happening within a specific context.
Right.
And circumcision rates are different.
All over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah.
We had some commenters from Europe, Australia, Canada.
Yeah.
And they were saying that routine circumcision is
not as common.
Way less common there.
Right.
They were even kind of surprised.
That Americans are so focused on it.
By how focused we are on it in America.
Yeah. Makes you realize how much our culture affects what we think is normal or necessary.
It's so interesting.
And one woman from Europe said, want to add an opinion from someone not U.S.-based. It is rarely done in Europe and is broadly seen as a needless procedure on babies who cannot consent to it. The claims regarding cleanliness are largely unfounded, assuming you have a proper hygiene routine. It reduces sensitivity and creates needless pain for a baby. It is only done here for religious reasons or medical necessity. This idea that everyone has it done is very U.S.-centric because in a lot of places, this is untrue.
So like what we think is normal here isn't necessarily normal everywhere else.
Absolutely. And she goes on to say, the idea that it looks better is personal preference, which again is largely U.S.-centric. Nobody cares about how uncircumcised penises look most of the time. And if they do, I question their maturity as an adult.
It's crazy how much cultural norms
affect what we think is normal or beautiful.
Shape our perception.
Well, acceptable, even about genitalia.
It really highlights that our ideas about beauty are really socially constructed.
Yeah, this is
a good one. Right. It's so eye-opening.
Yeah, we've talked about
ethical considerations, cultural differences, personal stories,
body image,
the evolving understanding.
They have autonomy.
It's been a good one. It's been a good one. Makes you think about all the stuff we just accept without even realizing it.
Right, like what we consider normal.
Exactly.
It's always good to question things.
Yeah.
Be open to other perspectives.
So before we finish up this deep dive, I want to go back to the woman who started this whole conversation on Reddit.
Yeah.
Remember, she was the one who was thinking about circumcising her son.
Right.
Well, she actually posted an update.
Oh.
After reading through all the responses.
I'd be curious to hear what she said.
And it really shows the power of just like open and honest conversation. Because she said that after thinking about it a lot and having a conversation with her husband.
Okay.
They decided not to circumcise.
Wow. So they changed their minds.
Their son.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It sounds like all those different perspectives.
All those stories.
Really made them reconsider.
Yeah.
And she even thanked the Reddit community.
Oh.
She was like, I had no idea this topic would blow up like this.
I bet she didn't.
And that there would be so much discussion.
Yeah. You never know what's going to go viral.
You never know what's going to resonate with people.
Exactly.
And she even addressed some of the people who criticized her.
Okay.
For asking for advice on Reddit.
Oh, interesting.
Because I don't really have anywhere else.
Yeah.
To get these male perspectives.
Right, because it's not like...
It's not something you
bring up at a dinner party?
Yeah, bring up at dinner.
Right.
And she explained why it was important to her.
Okay.
To challenge her husband's views. Even though it might have seemed like she was trying to change his mind. She said she just wants both her husband and her son to feel loved and accepted for who they are.
That's so sweet.
Regardless of circumcision status.
I love that.
It's just such a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
And it speaks volumes
just
about
their values.
Her values as a parent.
As a mom, yeah.
And she also thanked the community for the relationship advice.
Oh, cool. So it sounds like it helped her.
Because she got some relationship advice, too.
Yeah.
And she said it helped her navigate that conversation with her husband.
That's great.
So it's amazing how a question on the internet can lead to personal growth.
Right.
And stronger relationships.
It really shows the power of connection.
Yeah, and the willingness to, listen and learn from each other.
To be open,
Even in a digital space.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of circumcision, what are your biggest takeaways?
I mean, there's so much here.
What really resonated with you?
I think we uncovered so much more than just the pros and cons of circumcision. Like we talked about ethics and culture and body image and even autonomy. And it's amazing to see how powerful online communities can be when it comes to sharing information and getting support and just...
And having those conversations.
Having these conversations that you might not...
Be comfortable having.
Feel comfortable having.
Elsewhere.
In other settings.
Exactly. And this isn't just about one couple's decision.
Right.
This is a conversation that we need to keep having as a society.
How do we balance individual choice with tradition?
Right.
How do we make sure medical decisions are made with consent?
With informed consent.
Yeah. How do we create a world where everyone feels accepted?
Yeah.
These are tough questions. They are, but important ones.
Really important.
So let's keep talking about them.
Yes. Please keep the conversation going.
If you want to explore more topics like this, be sure to subscribe to Voices of the Soul
on your favorite podcast app. And for more discussions and video content, check out Shauna Plage's YouTube channel.
Yes.
Don't forget to like and comment and share this episode with anyone who might find it interesting.
Yeah, spread the word.
Until next time, keep those voices strong.